Hey everybody at Church Universal and Triumphant, Namaste. It's Ben, also known as Brother Eli. Some people call me Benjamin within the church, which I like actually. Growing up as a kid, I remember in Maine, I remember encountering a lot of angry school teachers who would only call me by my full first name when they were angry or wanted something. Um, so when I entered the church after a period of time when I started, um, I suppose it's fair to say, claiming more access to the information, I noticed that more and more people within the church refer to me as Benjamin, and it's flattering to me. Benjamin, the name, it means son of the right hand of God, but it also means, in some contexts, I think it's the youngest boy in a family. So, or when people are not expected to have any more children. So, a family has had 7 kids, three boys and 4 girls. I don't know, probably back in the 1800s. And finally, the eighth child comes and it's a boy. It's not likely that there's going to be another child. They say Benjamin. So it tends to be assigned to the youngest male member of a family, which is somewhat interesting. In any event, I wanted to give you a quick update regarding my cases because they do pertain directly to what it is that we do at Church Universal and Triumphant. I have to do a lot of pro se work on my own behalf. Pro se is a Latin term. The courts also use in propria persona. I'm probably butchering the Latin per the usual course, unfortunately, but in propria or in propria persona, I think it's in propria persona. Um, it means on your own behalf. Unfortunately, I'm not represented by a lawyer. I do have assistance from lawyers in that I'm friends with attorneys online. However, lawyers, when will sign a case, when they sign a case and show the client on paper in material reality that they've signed, it's called being an attorney of record. So what I seek is an attorney of record so that I can settle these multifarious claims, which are some are civil claims and some are criminal claims, um, uh, and it's important that there's that resolution occur. I have not done anything wrong, but people who are in my position often become targets. So it's important, and as a matter of fact, there's a whole section at the United Nations and at the American Bar Association in New York City, and also nationally. The Lawyers Guild nationally refers to a group of people known as endangered attorneys. There have been assassinations overseas in Turkey and so forth. Judges murdered, and that also occurs periodically in the United States. So it's important that everybody is properly protected and that everybody pull together when they need to do so, including to protect people who are at risk for speaking their minds or trying to take needed legal action. And unfortunately, in Maine, there's an overwhelming need for legal action, not only to protect myself, but to protect and advance the interests of the Great White Brotherhood, and to stop the religious persecution and to stop people from saying that we're a second-class tier citizen or because we seek social change and a God-directed government that we somehow are supposed to be destroyed effectively. So there needs to be a regime change up here. And I believe that places like Brazil and Venezuela are probably experiencing a lot of many similar pressures. But unfortunately, the confusion with regard to the elections has contributed. The U.S. elections has contributed to the problem. Um, I don't want to soft pedal anybody in, but the reality of the situation is that I had begun a dialogue with the Department of Justice. It did not proceed according to my expectation necessarily, but it was in motion. And I had Trump officials reach out to me in a subtle manner, but they did reach out to indicate that they had started a conversation, and this whole campaign was an enormous disruption to that conversation. That's not good. And there are a bunch of other things that aren't good that are occurring nationwide with regard to the refusal to stop medical abuse, and the refusal to stop the allopathic doctors lobby, and that absolutely must be addressed. Nobody will be safe until the medical lies are addressed. And I think that the ranch is aware of the problem inherent in, promoting rules that are erosive of individual rights. At no point is an individual not important. We have to be reminded of this when we look at our government, we look at laws that say everybody will act in the same way in order to benefit everybody. At no point is an individual's experience not important. And so when a law is passed that says everybody must adhere to this particular way of living, it is inherently annihilating to that person who cannot find himself or herself within that system, whose name, if you will, is not properly reflected within that decision making, which is why it absolutely is paramount that the state of Maine is run by a God-directed organization that has nothing to do with force and coercion in healthcare. So I work on that as much as I can, but it's difficult for me because a number of years back I made the choice, or participated in the choice. I wasn't really fully the driver in this particular instance, but I was relocated here about 11 years ago, and it was never really the right decision. And in talking to one of the attorneys, an attorney from Colorado, as a matter of fact, she mentioned to me over the internet, it was a bad choice back then, and it remains problematic because it is too far, it's too remote, it's too away from your co-Sheilas. You don't really have a chance to interact, and everything else starts to crumble. All access and the ability to socialize, all of that begins to crumble as a consequence. So it needs to be corrected, and I've been lobbying hard for a removal to a hotel room, and I hope that occurs. And I pray that church people find the strength and find the resources to assist me directly, other than how it's traditionally been done, which has been to, everybody, I think, pursue what they need to do to keep the flame active in their hearts and to pursue, protection of the higher self and act with the higher self and to, do God's will. Yes, but also to reach out to your brethren. I've historically not been that great at being firm in that regard, because when you're involved in litigation, you really do need your friends and the support of your friends and your family. And we are a church. And I love my co-Sheilas, and I do receive assistance from my co-Sheilas too. And I receive certain forms of moral support even over the internet from my friends on Facebook who have been in CUT or affiliated with Mother for years, that I don't find anywhere else. And it's powerful, and it's galvanizing and it's transformative. And these are very loving people, but it has to be taken to that next level, where we move together as a church, as a unit, and I believe I can't imagine that it's not the will of the masters and so forth. But I can answer more questions about what's going on up here. But in the interim, I wanted to get on and talk a little bit about the altar at Church Universal and Triumphant, because I know that folks don't necessarily want to hear me yammer on incessantly about legal matters, but it's important that I get the information out there. So, still wrapping that up, still no attorney of record. I need a signed attorney, someone to show me on paper, an actual piece of paper they have signed, to represent me, so that we're all moving forward into court if necessary, because I need money to get out of here. I need a driver's license. I can't help the church effectively if I don't have access to private transportation alongside everybody else, or a chance to work gainfully. And also at this juncture, I think it's important that church coffers open and that individual donors come forward to assist the development of a church. And if that occurred in the form of a loan, I'd be very generous in interest rates on repaying that loan. So if you're nearing retirement, or you're in retirement, or you want to find a place to park your money, remember that I'm a tax write-off. Order of Truth is a church, and so it helps allay your tax liability to donate. But also, I'd be very generous in repaying a loan. We need one church in this area at Gardner, and I proposed the acquisition of a couple different locations that I feel are not God-directed organizations. When I'm able to situate within a church and an office with private housing, which is important because it's not private at all up here. So there's the heart flame. My heart flame is extinguished very frequently over the last 11 years, and that's absolutely not acceptable. Um, Once that occurs, we can start building together and enriching our lives together and helping each other grow and flourish and to spread the gospel, the Sanatana Dharma, to keep the true intention and the true path alive, and not to let all of these problems with the government destroy certain classes of God-fearing people. It's critically important. So it looks like I've got some pretty good lighting here. I have my sound, I believe, is up and running. That's good. My hair's not combed and my beard's not trimmed, but we'll work on that down the line. Let me tell you a little bit about the altar. I had this interesting, it wasn't an argument, but I had an interesting conversation with a man who has been in church since time began, as far as I know, and is very devout, and is also a very skilled graphic artist. And he, at one point, if you look on my list of videos, you'll see that I have an altar, a 4-part video that discusses my home altar. And he said, he responded, and again, he's a good friend of mine, he responded to me saying, well, this is not the altar layout, this is not appropriate. And I think that really what he was referring to was his frustration with the fact that I'm up here in an ashram by myself, and referring to that as an altar. Well, he's right in that it is not appropriate. It's not an appropriate setting. However, it's the only thing that we have up here in Maine until we have those donations come in, or until there's a settlement, or a lawyer comes forward from the church and says, let's sign this on. That way we can settle the whole thing. And I know lawyers, around here. I could point people in the right direction. Rather we can, let's settle it on. Let's settle it. Push everything forward. That way we don't have to worry about individual donations. But it does require effort exterior to my own initiative. In any event, so the altar was criticized briefly because it was well, this doesn't look like a TSL altar at all. So I'm here to present you with my rejoinder to that. Really quickly, there are 2 sources of information that I can locate for you with regard to how to lay out the altar. What's interesting about my position within the church is that I'm at a specific point within the timeline of the unfoldment. So my contribution, informs the decision making at the ranch, including Mother's work and Mark preceding her, all the decisions that went down through the lineage, resulting in the current altar layout. The current layout, and by that I mean the formal ranch layout. When you look at the picture of King Arthur's court of Jesus on the left, facing the altar, Jesus on the left, Germain on the right, the tree of life in the middle, and then the different forms of the different, the amethyst on the altar and so forth. Kuan Yin, I think it's Kuan Yin and Mary. That we might have both. Mary is definitely present, and I think it's Michael, and I think. Well, we'll take a look at it and we'll see. Michael's definitely on the altar, I believe, and of course Mother and Mark. But I will read you this passage that I found. But the other source, defending my altar layout, and I just, not that I need to defend anything, but I did receive, after I read that letter, and it was a really quick letter saying, why don't you look at a link for a change. They're really, and I looked online and I received information back from, I don't know that you can see me right. I looked at information from the church that endorsed home altars, and so my altar, as I put it in the 4-part video. If you refer to that video again, my hair is really long and at that point, but you will see that my altar is really a home altar. And for home altars, which are encouraged, it is also a Hindu tradition, correct, to keep a home altar and to worship within the home. The home altar has it can include pictures of elementals, or tokens of elementals, animals, Catholic iconography, cards and pieces of art that you've attracted, rather collected from other churches or the Catholic Church, or I imagine a Star of David, or other kinds of iconography can be included. It says that specifically in the literature that I received from the church. So, but I think that he was working under the impression, probably because this is a holy ashram and it is holy orders, that it should look like what's going on at the ranch and so forth. So I want to be clear that that would be great for me to, that's what I want to do here, but I don't really have the opportunity or the room in my little rinky-dink one-bedroom apartment to have people here to worship. So I can't really put up the full altar, even though I'm an ashram and even though I'm in holy orders, and that it's important that all the iconography is properly displayed. So I do support the correct layout, but I also support the notion, which is supported by the ranch, of a home altar being a different concept. So, right, you can include the Catholic picture of Raphael, and you can include, I'm trying to think, I have a picture of my dog Apollo on my altar, which is entirely appropriate. Because it's a home altar. Might even be appropriate in some respects for a Zoroastrian altar as well, which we can discuss additionally. But right, so what I'm going to do now is, so that's one source of information. I know that, I'm sure if you are licensed to open a church, TSL center, you would receive the right information or be able to take a look at the layout, and whether you're quote-unquote licensed or not. I'm not sure that that's material to this discussion, but you can determine that from, and he had a link, so someone in Australia knows, and there's a link to exactly how it's supposed to go. But I also have information from you that is directly from the source at the encyclopedia. So Summit Lighthouse. And the topic header is altar. This is the official encyclopedia, and what it will show you is the large altar in King Arthur's court. And looking at it, that's dancing Shiva on the floor in front of the rail. It's definitely Shiva. I don't know if it's the 49 fires of the completion of manifestation or not. It could be, I suppose. I'll take a look at it and figure it out. I think it's Kuan Yin on the right and Mary on the left, but it's definitely Mary on the left. And I believe that all of the formal altars contain a Michael on the altar, a sword, 2 pieces of amethyst, plants, but I'm not sure that I don't know that there's a location necessarily, but I know that what it's saying is that it's Jesus on the left and Germain on the right. And when you put Mark and Mother on, this is interesting and worth noting, Mother goes on Germain's side and Mark goes on Jesus' side. That's the correct layout. I can't get back to I'm just stuck on a picture of the actual layout. I do have it here in front of me, so let me read you the text. The place, again, the header is altar, and I'm taking this from the TSL Encyclopedia. The place of change, of alteration, of alchemy, where all change is wrought by God's law. El Moria says, "So, beloved, there is no place you can go that is more powerful than your altar. We have created the portable altar for you so you can fold it up." I wonder if I have one in here. I had it here a minute ago, but it's actually it's actually on my altar at this point. But I'll show it to you when I have it again. Put it in your backpack, be on your way, and then set it up at your destination. Wherever you are, you can establish your own force field, even if you have but a small crystal as the chalice for the flame. Wherever you go, you can raise up an altar to God, Yahweh, as did Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the children of Israel in their wilderness wanderings. Yes, beloved hearts, this is the way. There's an inner altar of the heart, and there's an outer altar where you offer your devotions, which you can set up anytime, anywhere. Teach this to your children. Teach your children, beloved, that the altar is the place where God and man meet through the flame of the ark of the covenant. I ask you to go to the altar frequently and to tend the flame on the altar of your heart, for this practice will result in mighty changes in the earth. To set up a simple altar in your home, start with a table or dresser covered with a white cloth, preferably linen. Hang the chart of your divine self centered above the altar with the Charles Sindelar portraits, it says it specifically, which I'm grateful for that, of Saint Germain and Jesus Christ, to the right and left. Place a place a cut glass or crystal chalice or a simple bowl at the center of the altar and a candle on either side. You may wish to add pieces of amethyst or natural quartz crystal, a Bible, and representative books of the law. Climb the highest mountain, the lost years of Jesus, the lost teachings of Jesus 1 and 2. Those are the 4 recommendations in the encyclopedia. Place a framed photograph of the messenger Mark Prophet on Jesus' side of the altar and a framed photograph of the messenger Elizabeth Clare Prophet on Saint Germain's side. You can also include fresh or silk flowers and selected statuary of the saints of East and West, but be careful not to clutter your altar. So not cluttering your altar probably means doing other than what I did in order to see some, have the impression of Japanese lettering to remind us of Zen and so forth in the background by using an empty sake bottle. But it's a home altar. It's not. This is not going on at in a center anywhere. This is just a home altar. I'm not sure if that was the source of criticism or not. It's totally irrelevant if you want to know the truth. But what I appreciated in the commentary that I received was that the fact that he cared about this being an ashram and this being a place where people should worship effectively. And so home altar, yes, home altar, because this is my home, for better or worse, in this sort of temporal reality. But ultimately, a fully realized altar needs to materialize, and so we continue to strive in that direction. So refer to this, and that's the entire passage. But what's interesting to me about it was what they said about. Clearly, it's Jesus on the left and Germain on the right, and but when you put Mark goes on Jesus' side, and then Mother goes on Germain's side, on all of the at all of the centers, all 150 of the centers that we have worldwide. And I've never seen an altar not include flowers, and I've never seen an altar not include amethyst in our offering. This is a choice, but again, this is to set up a simple altar in your home. I actually have a piece of rose quartz that I use, but I had a piece of amethyst that I couldn't work with it. I'm not sure. I need to recapture a vital piece of amethyst in order to complete my altar. Amethyst will protect you as well. It's good for the blood, and it's a protection. Has protective qualities, they say. That's part of the lore, at least. And use rose quartz for anything to do with the pink ray. Let's see if we might as well do a little bit of additional work at this point, but I'd like to make sure that I'm centered on the screen. Okay, let's take a look to see what's going on. Okay, so maybe a couple more encyclopedia topics here. Yeah, you don't have permission to create the page on Charles Sindelar, but that's something that I would be interested in. Given funding, I'd like to include Charles Sindelar in a book because he's an American master. I think I've shared information about an an American master because he generated those paintings. But you know what? He started off, I think it was in the 20s or something, as a commercial artist in print media in American newspapers for big companies uh, like well, I can tell you what they are. I think that it's like one is he might have done an early Aunt Jemima even. I'll tell you what it is exactly. I'd like to, if I had funding, I would have an order of truth. And, it's important to me and everybody in the church that we're adherent to the Dharma and not doing a lot of derivative stuff that is fallen or out of alignment. But to supplement it would be really exciting and valuable. To Charles Sindelar signed print, Saint Germain, 1935, at auction through Worth Point or just being sold. Wow, amazing. These are for sale. Various conditions, so they're not in the greatest shape of the world. Yeah, I can see the water stain actually. What I would do is probably go through and I don't know how you would repair that. You could crop it. The stain is not so bad, but the germane is water stained. There's a water stain at the bottom, an obvious one, and you can crop it, I would imagine, then reframe it, probably. But for sale on Worth Point. I wonder who this is. A pair of Charles, the site is worthpoint.com. A pair of Charles Joseph Sindelar pencil signed prints of Jesus Christ and Saint Germain. The originals were done around 1935. I have no idea when these were signed, but they must have been signed before May 1947. Each print is signed in pencil at the bottom right of the print. See below for pictures. Each opens up like a greeting card, but there are no words on the insides or the backs. There are various condition issues, including a watermark on the bottom of the Saint Germain, what looks like damage to the front of Jesus, which I don't see. Oh, I do see it now that they mention it. It looks like a reflection. It's not a reflection, it's damage. The white that you see on Jesus is actually damage, it's not a reflection. And pinholes around the corners of both. Condition leaves something to be desired, but these are not too common as there are none of these for sale on eBay or anything like it for that matter. Size is 5x7. They both come in a green display, sold in as-is condition. Artist Charles Joseph Sindelar was an American illustrator and painter who in later life focused on religious art. Sindelar established a reputation for himself in graphic design and illustration during the first quarter of the 20th century through his favorably reviewed creation of a number of menu cover designs produced for a series of events referred to as the Lotus Club dinners in New York City. The guest lists for the events included 4 U.S. presidents and other notables of the time, including writer Mark Twain. Fascinating. Sindelar's covers incorporated a likeness of the celebrity who was being feted at the event, accompanied by intricate detailing. In the 1930s and 1940s, along with May Dacamara, Sindelar produced artwork for the I Am activity of the Saint Germain Foundation. It is said that Saint Germain appeared to Charles Sindelar, I've heard this, in his ascended master body, and he painted his portrait. It has also been said that Charles Sindelar was Leonardo da Vinci in a former life and is now an ascended master. Please check out my other items for a sweet combined shipping rate. Please read before bidding. Buyers with a feedback score of less than 3 or a feedback score below 95% must contact me or your bid will be canceled. I do combine shipping, etc. The gentleman or woman goes on. If you're interested, please go. And then there are more similar items. There are a number of similar items on Worth Point. One is just Jesus. One is Jermaine with a white mark on his neck, but it's actually, that looks like that is a reflection, but it's here. But I think it's the angle of the photograph, and it looks like light. It does not look like damage. And then the Jesus looks like in pretty, it's old, but it looks like it's in good shape, relatively speaking. I don't see, I think some of these, as I said, could be matted, you know. So these are 4 original etchings. Pretty interesting are the Charles Sindelars of the full length of Jesus. Charles Sindelar also did a Jesus where Jesus is standing in clouds, and you can see uh, his vestments, his garments, and then one where it looks like there are yellow flowers behind him, so he must be standing in a field. So definitely check these out if you're interested on Worth Point. And anyone wants to get me something nice for Christmas, one of these Jesuses would be fantastic. At the spring, interesting. And it's actually a Native American woman, First Nationer, with a water jug, kneeling, circa 1930. Fascinating. It has some foxing, it says. But again, I think you can take care of some of that. Okay, I want to go through and I'll mention, moving on to the next phase of this, and we'll get back into some quotes, some more information from the encyclopedia as well. But I wanted to answer the media recommendation because that's an interesting conversation to have at this point. As you all know, the church historically, it's funny, the people in my family who aren't necessarily huge fans of religion, I don't want to say that, I guess that's not really fair to say, they're huge fans of religion other than Church Universal and Triumphant. They've commented to me about our historical lack of affection for media, and that's something that I discovered from having been in holy orders for such a long time and having devoted so much time and energy to holy orders that I've been able to go through archives and find all of these sort of arcane recordings of what we were doing at the ranch in the 80s, the Reagan 80s, some of which was really interesting, some of which was a little bit frightening, just in terms of not in terms of mission, but I think when you're a young Sheila and you've never heard decreeing before and so forth, or you've never heard a formal service before, when you hear it, it sounds like a lot of hellfire and brimstone, which it is. It's the violet flame, yes, but it's also hellfire and brimstone. At least what many people would term to be that, which means the fundamental preacher calling down God's holy wrath. But I will say, in addition to being maybe a little bit frightened, quote unquote, it's also a relief to have a whole room full of people on your side. When you can't get assistance from anybody else, nobody else cares about your daughter or the safety of your animals, or the fact that you can't find your spouse, or whatever else is, or you can't make it to your husband or your wife, whatever else is going on that is so painful and yet will not be resolved by intervention from one's family, for instance, or will not make sense to anybody at the police department, or and so on. So amazing, powerful, dynamic decree sessions and religious sessions that include calls for protection from Elizabeth Clare Prophet and so forth in advance, so that the power doesn't overwhelm you. But we prayed away, there were certain musical artists who were taking up a lot of our time, evidently, and we decided that we had to clear our chakras of all of the influence of 4/4 time. That's how Mother refers to it. It's the rock music is the abuse of 4/4 time. As a minister, do I support that? Yes, I do. But I also, I'm also realistic, and that I personally listen to music as well, rock music included. But you have to be careful, and you have to be parsimonious sometimes, and you have to be alert to what else needs to be occurring, what other sorts of conversations have to be had. And sometimes it's not the rock musicians who have all the answers, as we know, but at other times it's other forms of noise and other forms of torment and the work of the fallen ones, and the laggards that needs to be shut out and shut down. Those prayers against rock music can also be used to achieve stopping the laggards and the fallen ones and the people who are interfering with the unfoldment. So, but what was my point when I first started on this course? Oh, media recommendations. So over the course of my time, like moving forward in holy orders, I've discovered, and because I watch a lot of Netflix and Hulu, and I'm engaged in media, I have experience working in media, uh, but also experience working a lot in church. I also have experience on these lawsuits, and I've also done a little. I'm also undertaking a little bit of entertainment law in my non-chaplaincy work, my legal work. Um, I'd recommend the following shows because I believe, right, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, because it mentions, and I'll get beyond that, but it mentions Church Universal and Triumphant within it, although not by name necessarily, but it's so, but our terms, our traditions are referred to with such frequency that it is easy to see us within the show. And it's easy to see the unfoldment co-occurring with what it is that we're doing at church. So, as I stated before, the producers are in basically lockstep with what we're doing. The problem is that it's black comedy, so it's assailing satanic witchcraft, but also discussing certain elements that we have in common with religious groups such as Wicca, where elementals are important and astrology is important and plays into what it is that we do and how we worship. Also, our form of soteriology is mentioned and discussed, and I can go through the first one or two episodes and point out all the references to Church Universal and Triumphant. Like if you'll see on Chance Perdomo's shirt, he's a character from Britain who's a witch on the show on his shirt, but they're portrayed as the younger witches and warlocks on the show are portrayed in sort of contemporary clothing. He has a T-shirt, a purple T-shirt on that says "Aloha from Hell." So the word aloha is specifically mentioned on the show, and aloha, of course, is one of our masters here. The way that they discuss the elementals is very similar to what we do at church, and some of the ceremonies even resemble what goes on as well. But again, I'm not saying that we're satanic witches, obviously, but I'm saying that the show is a parody of that, trying to support us on our path and so forth. And what happened was that they were sued for supporting us by a satanic group operating under the name of United Federation of Churches. So when you see the lawsuit, it says United Federation of Churches versus the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It's not the Christian churches that are suing my show. It's the Satanic Temple that is suing the show. So it's not appropriate for a group to come in and try to interfere in my work if it's helpful to what it is that I'm doing, which is where when I get off the space, I need to go and find a way to recuperate loss based upon what it was that they tried to do. I think they tried to crowdsource us out or something. I don't fully understand all of it, but it's a problem. It's a problem when someone comes in and tries to say no more information. And what's interesting about it, and I want to show this to people at church as well, because as stated, and I'll keep stating it until people understand that I speak the truth. Right, the symbology on the show, some of it is not entirely satanic. Like when you look at the goat, the sabbatic goat, they said, well, we own that. You can't use that in the show, and the show agreed with them. But that sabbatic goat is not owned by the Temple of Satan, so it's not appropriate for a evil religious group to come in and say you can't do that, you can't do this, and that's ours, and you can't use it. Entirely inappropriate, because that particular the sabbatic goat is actually common to a number of different paths of paganism, and that's where I need to go in and counter Sue, so that it doesn't set a precedent that they own religious items that they don't in fact own. And although it may seem petty, if you think about it, I think people are probably aware, it's important that religious rights are protected and that people have the correct view, to use a Buddhist concept, on those rights. So, excuse me. Right, I'll be dealing with that once I have office space. And, if I get a settlement from that, would be great. And then we can open our church in Maine, or I can donate, finally get that elusive trailer next door to the ranch in Montana, or a modest home or ranch in Bozeman or Livingston, like everybody else has. So I'm taking a look at that. Okay, the other recommendations are great news. Okay, and if you don't want to deal with the witchcraft part of it, certainly understand not wanting to watch Sabrina, but it's a really good show, and I think that people have the maturity to appreciate it. Church people do. Great News is by Tina Fey, okay, who is a former Saturday Night Live writer. I think that she produced it. Tina Fey is part of something known as Second City, and Second City is a group of comedians in Chicago who ended up making it big after doing stage work for a while there, like an improv group. Joan Rivers is Second City. Tina Fey is Second City. The producer of the woman who plays Leslie Knope on Parks and Recreation is Second City. What is her name? I can't believe that I always forget her name. But Amy Poehler. Second City. So these are Second City people. What's interesting about Second City is that they're all were affiliated with Saturday Night Live. A lot of them have no more connection. Well, I think Tina might still do stuff for SNL, but these shows are timely and often refer to our issues. One show that Tina, 30 Rock is like that. 30 Rock is actually a spoof of life behind the scenes at NBC, with Alec Baldwin being the big sort of fumbling NBC studio executive who's constantly trying to take over components of television, and there are fights with Jane Krakowski's character and the other characters and so forth, and she's constantly sucking all the attention and energy out of everybody, and everybody has to entirely operate around her needs and her ego, and so that's part of the show as well. But Great News is about a news station, and that is definitely worth a watch. What's interesting about it too is, in the first instance, it's called Great News, which is a parody, rather a play on good news. Like when you have good news, you are proselytizing, going from door to door, proclaiming the good news. They call the show Great News. So although they're not saying up front that it's about the CUT, it is if you read between the lines and look at what's being discussed on the show. And it's interesting. The first episode, I mean, all you really have to do to understand that is watch the first episode. And when the Catholic priest is giving a eulogy, in particular in that one scene, you can tell that they're referring to some of the litigation in which I've been involved, and it's pretty funny, and I appreciate it. I wish, of course, in talking to one of the attorneys who actually worked on reviewing information by one of the lawyers who actually worked on the John Benet Ramsey case, where Burke Ramsey, ended up having to sue because they were saying so many horrible things about him in the press. He said, I think his opinion was, what did I read? That it's not really appropriate for them to be commenting before relocating you to safety. That was his point. But my counterpoint with all of that is that, right, but you have to consider timeline, you have to consider the unfoldment and who's saying what, where, and what information needs to hit the mat, if you will, in order for everything to be propelled forward. So in my view, entirely inappropriate in Sabrina for them to be saying, no more information, no more discussion, no more legal information through this television show. even though it's helping this whole group of people, ultimately entirely inappropriate for anybody to be suing a show that is vital to a church unfoldment, or is providing alchemical information or alchemical truths. So that's a point as well. But the other argument is, in an entertainment law, yeah, maybe not. Maybe actually make sure that if you're talking about someone, with or without their permission, that that person is not imperiled in the first place. So that's a point as well. But yeah, that's kind of that. But Great News, definitely watch Great News. I have 3 episodes of Parks and Recreation that I picked out that are relevant to us and are funny to watch because you can kind of see us in it. You've noticed people comment about Venezuelan elections and what is it, a coup? Like, I don't really follow it that closely, but there's an episode about Venezuela on Parks and Recreation. There's an episode called Beauty Pageant, speaking of the John Benet Ramsey case, on Parks and Recreation that I have earmarked and watched 1,000 times. Chris Pratt is really funny in that because he's basically, they have him living in a hole in his ex-girlfriend's backyard, and also has quote-unquote housing problems, and is like basically in a tent in the middle, out in the middle of nowhere in a pit, while it rains, and his girlfriend is eating inside with her new boyfriend, eating a full hot meal and so forth. So there's a funny interchange with regard to that. Chris Pratt is funny in it. Again, that's Amy Poehler. Great News. So it's Second City. The other Second City is Parks and Recreation. Well, Parks and Recreation and Great News are both technically Second City because Amy Poehler and Tina Fey were SNL colleagues. And then, and then there's a third that I just picked out. It was interesting because I found it earmarked by the producers after I looked for it, and it was meaning they had done a special producer's cut, even though it was an entirely random show, and I just thought, I want to see Chris Pratt's response to one thing, and so I looked for probably, on and off for about a week and a half, I would go through reviews. It wasn't a special episode at all, it's just that Chris Pratt had like one funny sort of interesting moment that I wanted to capture, and by the time I finally nailed it, it was the one show in the entire season that said producer's cut. So I had been tracked when I went in to watch it, and I do have that too. I own these, so I can tell you exactly what the episodes are, but I think it's the second season. You'll find, and it's called Beauty Pageant, and then it's the one that follows Beauty Pageant is actually the one in Venezuela, to the best of my awareness. And then the Chris Pratt episode that I looked for, which had been specially redone, I think it's called Freddy Spaghetti. Or Spaghetti Monster? I think it's called Freddy Spaghetti, the name of the episode. But definitely watch Beauty Pageant and Venezuela if you're at all interested in that, because it's hilarious. It's the Venezuelan officials having to come and interact with the Parks and Rec department in Indiana, and the clash of cultures. And Aubrey Plaza is really funny in it, whose mother is Puerto Rican, is really funny in it as well. So yeah, those are my recommendations for the time being. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, there really are a ton of movies that are relevant and timely, but I would start with those particular television shows. They're not necessarily recommended for kids, with some of the humor, but use your own discretion and have a good time. I don't know if that's it for now or not. Maybe I should pull out some more. I mean, if I got into my YouTube right now. But if you were to go out today, I'll tell you right now. If you were to go out today, and someone asked at church, so I got on the board and said, you didn't give the prayer, and I ended up actually posting the prayer, which is an El Moria prayer, and I did post it in my notes on YouTube. But they said, where are the media recommendations? And they're actually, yeah, I think Amy's not looking that happy with me right now. Sister City is the Venezuelan one. It's Baragua, Venezuela. That's the sister city to Pawnee, Indiana, on the show. So watch that one. That's episode 5 of season 2. And then watch Beauty Pageant, which is my favorite of all of them, episode 3 of season 2, and then I'll tell you if I can find, I think it's Freddy Spaghetti, and it's like, that's a different season. Or maybe it's the last one of, it could be the last one of season 2. Oh, it's not going to tell me. Where Chris Pratt's funny because he is having to balance his relationship with April and his ex-girlfriend, his new girlfriend, Aubrey Plaza. So there's a fight in it, and they won't show me what that is yet. I guess actually, I don't know that I can dig it out, but it's the last one in one of the seasons. And in any event, it's those 3 episodes. I don't know why they won't. It looks like they're not even listing it. Maybe they took it down. I own it, however. I just can't pull up my. I can't pull up the specific episodes right now because I don't recognize the format. Let me see if I can get in here. There's Chris. Yeah, I don't see it yet. Trending. I'd have to sign in. I'll tell you exactly what it is. Just bear with me for 1 second. Keep going. Okay, I'm actually automatically signed in. Okay, and then my shows. Oh, no, not telling me. Little Sebastian I almost bought, but if they're not gonna, it is Freddy Spaghetti, okay, and it's actually episode. They also the producers cut the master plan, although that was not done before Freddy Spaghetti was done and posted. And then none of the other ones are producers cuts, just those 2. And season 2, all of my recs from Parks and Recreation are in season 2. Episode 3, Beauty Pageant. Episode 5, Sister City, the one about Venezuela. And then the very last episode of the season, which is called Freddy Spaghetti. And those are my 3 recommendations. I mean, I certainly get you film recommendations and other TV recommendations. Certain concepts are underworked or are, you could redevelop some of the programming. I'm trying to think, but generally, I'm really interested in Second City, primarily, and some films. I really like the Ninth Gate by Roman Polanski, which is a film about arcane book collectors and collectors of ancient alchemical books. That's an interesting film. I understand the caveat against watching horror, although I do watch horror. I get sick of it, though, sometimes. I'm trying to think of other movies. And by that, I really mean not gore movies, but like thriller horror movies that are religious, that have a religious themes. The Omen. Actually, that would be the remake of The Omen would be my other choice. And in making these recommendations, I'd say because they're either supporting us somehow or are relevant in a vital way to what I'm undertaking on behalf of the church. Remake of The Omen with Seamus and that I would definitely take a look at that as well. It's actually the woman who played the CIA agent in, let me tell you what it is, in The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon. They recruited her out of college, and she's on this, basically lives like as a college student or like as a administrative assistant in Paris, but she's actually an agent, and she's actually in The Omen. Not The Omen 2 or 3. It's the remake of The Omen. Liev Schreiber, directed by John Moore. There's a very kind of lavish inside of the Vatican shot at the beginning too, where they're giving a PowerPoint. The cardinals are giving a PowerPoint presentation to the Pope about all of these signs that signal the end of the world, and it's all like in Italian with subtitles. It's pretty great. Take a look at it for that reason, and also, Mia Farrow's in it as Mrs. Baylock, and replacing the Billy Whitelaw character from the first, rather reprising the role of the Billy Whitelaw character, Mrs. Baylock, the insidious Mrs. Baylock, who is the replacement governess. It's in the new version. It's Mia Farrow, and it's Julia Stiles, who is the mom, Damien's mom. So that's my recommendation: The Omen, 3 episodes of Parks and Recreation, and the first episode of Great News. Watch as much Great News as you'd like, as you know, but you'll get the flavor of what I'm talking about by the very first episode. By the end of the very first episode, you'll see all the innuendo and points and inside comedy and so forth. And I hope you enjoy it. I don't know. I can keep going, I suppose. A couple more things to discuss, maybe. I'm not sure what else needs to be addressed right now. Right, Great Central Sun Magnet. See, were I to have the option to get the church going up here, we would be opening one or more churches, Church Universal and Triumphant churches, with a focus on. I'm receiving information from the Solo Logoi about that, and from the Great Central Sun about that, which is entirely appropriate. But there's a specific dispensation in coming down with regard to how to start information rolling at these new locations up here. And I can talk to you in private about that as well if you want to email to me. I'm going to leave it at that. Thought form of the year. What is this? Silent Watcher. Okay, well, this is a huge entry, and I have no way of imparting all of it to you, but I will bookmark it for our use here. It's called Thought Form for the Year. It's an entry at the Summit Lighthouse Ascended Master Encyclopedia. Just look it up. The free encyclopedia, but it is also our TSL AM encyclopedia, Thought Form for the Year. Twice a year at winter and summer solstice. Again, days of the year that are mentioned specifically in Sabrina, incidentally. They also have a whole interesting thing about Yule that corresponds to what we do. And I'd like to share that with you eventually as well. The Lords of Karma convene in the council chambers of the Royal Teton Retreat to act upon the petitions of sons and daughters of God and to deliver the cosmic dispensations that come forth from the heart of Alpha and Omega and the Great Central Sun, allotments of energy for the enlightenment and progress of humanity. Each New Year's Eve, the thought form for the year is released from the silent watcher of the solar system to the Lord of the world, Gautama Buddha, who in turn releases it to Earth's unascended evolutions from the Royal Teton Retreat. The thought form contains the keys to the outpicturing of the will of God for the planet for the coming 12-month cycle, and it lists by year going back to 1962, beginning with a golden spinning wheel and ending in 1998 with Mother Mary nurturing the children of the world. And in between, there are all sorts of individual listings. The Great Tao is one. The All-Seeing Eye is one. The Mighty Blue Eagle from Sirius is one. Kuan Yin's Scroll to the Children of the Sun is one. I bet that one's interesting, and that was done in 1984. So, right, it'll come to me, and we will vet it together, certainly, through the dispensation, and yet we can also use thought forms from this particular study and this particular compilation to uh, provide a focus. I'll close with this, which is several paragraphs. I'm quoting Kuan Yin. Well, Kuan Yin's Scroll to the Children of the Sun. It's in the thought form section of the encyclopedia. And let me read out for you, and then we'll use this as a closing prayer. The angel of Sanat Kumara does deliver to me the scroll of the thought form for the year 1984. As I open the scroll, I see before me a rendering of the Lady Kuan Yin, and in her grace, she is portrayed with a scroll in her right hand tied with that violet ribbon. And the scroll is symbolically the one that becomes the many, one for each child of the sun on earth, that in some hour of this year, 1984, shall be delivered to the heart and the soul in the etheric octave of the child of the sun. Each and every child of the sun on earth shall receive this scroll. The scroll contains the life record since the first incarnation in Mater. It does contain the debit and credit side of the ledger. It does contain a list of that which must be balanced, which must be paid, and that which is, as it were, money in the bank of the causal body as light that has ascended to heaven on account. It shows the karma remaining, that which is to be balanced, the dharma to be fulfilled, and does mark the projected hour and designated time of that one's fulfillment of courses of incarnations to the moment of the ascension in the light. Beloved ones, not only does this come as a dispensation of Alpha and Omega and the 24 elders, but it does come from the heart of Sanat Kumara, who gave leave to the Lady Kuan Yin to make this promise long, long ago to the children of the sun. It is the promise of a bodhisattva that ere her work should be completed, she should find each one and deliver the law's own mandate for the fulfillment of love's victory. Therefore understand, beloved hearts, that finally there is an engram, as some would see it, like a Chinese character. But this is an engram that represents the individual's personal formula for the victory of love. It is a yantra. It is a mantra. It is a focus of light that can be assimilated and used by each child of the heart of Kuan Yin, each child of the Sun Mother. Blessed ones, this formula and this engram of light will be internalized by you as you give the mantras of Kuan Yin. May the Blessed One be remembered and revered, for the heart of Kuan Yin is the open door to love, and to love, and to love. As a quick note, a yantra is Sanskrit, okay, and it is a geometrical representation of a sound pattern, a diagram used in meditation upon a deity, primarily in tantric worship. The one before me contains a Solomon seal, also known as a Star of David. It's a six-pointed star. The Sri Yantra is considered the most sacred yantra of all. It is composed of ascending, descending, interlaced triangles. It represents the interaction of the male and female principles. The yantra, known as the Wheel of Vishnu, depicts him with 16 arms inside his fiery disc, corresponding to the 16 petals of the throat chakra. 16 arms show the power of God through the word, through the yantra, through the secret rays. Another statement, consciousness is meant to flow into unity with the balanced cosmic forces of the pattern. The more love you pour into it, the more you become it, because your love is invested in the yantra. And therefore, by and by, that which you have adored becomes a part of you and is one with you, and thus there's a synthesis between creator and creation. So I believe I'll leave it there. The use of yantras as an adjunct to the giving of mantras is very ancient. I'll also mention bija syllable and various goals. And I'm going to close everything up with that information. It's been an hour and 5 minutes. Namaste. God bless everybody, and let's keep pushing forward through this, through these what appear to be obstacles, but are helping ultimately to are overcoming what appear to be obstacles. Clearly, it helps us resolve our being a part and needing to push everything forward at the local church parish level and also at the higher levels of government. Okay, thanks for listening. I'm going to review this and post it soon, I hope. Okay, take care, folks. Bye.